So, so I've got this Tucson here. It is the TS269 in D2, and I just did the video where I tuned up a viewer's knife. Exact same knife, but it's got D2 M390 steel. Well, the fix for that knife is something that I've done on a few knives, but I cut the video and I kind of don't discuss what the fix is because it's such an easy way to ruin a knife. Well, my version of that knife in that video is this knife, and the way that, because there's a couple of ways to fix that. So if the lock, like on this knife, it's making contact at, I don't know, let's call it 20%. So if it's not over far enough on the viewer's knife, on Dan's knife, he was locked up at about 10%. I mean, very minimal. And if you spine whacked it, that lock failed on his. And so one of the ways to fix that when you've got lock failure like that is to put tension on on this one. It's a frame lock, but it could be a liner lock. I disassembled this one because everything I'm talking about applies to this liner lock as well. It could be a bolster lock, a liner lock, this frame lock with a metal insert with titanium, or just, it could be a metal frame lock. I mean, so any of those types of locks where they make contact with the back of the blade and that's the lock, it applies. Everything I'm saying applies to this same lock right here. But one of the ways to resolve that, and it would be no different with this one, is to put more tension on this lock so that when it locked, there was more tension holding this over. And if there's more tension, then chances are the lock's not going to fail. Well, my version of this knife had quite a bit of tension on this. This lock was, man, there was a ton of tension, and it affected the drop action. It affected the ability to open the knife. It was just tough to open, and it was tough to actuate this lock. Whereas right now, it's not tough. I have, previous to starting the video, gone in and taken a reasonable amount of tension out of this frame lock. To me, this is where this should be. Now, lo and behold, same knife, and what do we have? The same issue, where the lock is set at a decent tension, and it's not locking. The lock is failing. Even though on this knife, there's quite a bit more lockup than was on his knife. Like this one's about 20%, his was 10%. So there's a couple of things I look for. I'm actually going to run through it and run through the fix. But there's a huge disclaimer in the title of the video, and now it's going to be verbal in the video. Do not do what I'm about to do. Now, if you're a tinkerer like me, and no matter what I say, you're going to do it anyways, I'd tell you that's me. Because, I mean, if I had a knife that the lock was failing or the tension was way too tight, I'd tinker with it. I'd fix it. But the disclaimer is, don't do this, because there's a really good chance you'll ruin your knife. And to be honest, I'm about to do this. I may ruin this knife. What I would tell you is, if you're a tinkerer and you can't help yourself, you want to learn this, you want to do it, man, buy a sub $30 knife, even with the liner, because you could still do what I'm about to do and adjust the lockup on a knife, but you can do it on a $25 knife. So if you do the inexcusable, which is take off too much material, if you take like just the slightest amount too much, the lock may never work again, and you've got lock rock on the blade, and you can't. There's no way to fix it once you've gone too far. So I'm going to say, if you're going to attempt what I'm doing, man, do it on an inexpensive knife. Don't do it on a knife that costs $50 or $75, which is probably where this D2 knife is. But yeah, that's not going to work. So clearly I could put that tension back into this lock, and man, that's the easy way to do it. But I think I'd rather have this action like Dan's action. Like I literally did to Dan's knife what I'm about to do to this knife. I modified that metal insert so that this could go further into the knife. And by doing so, it locked up. Well, let me get this apart, and I'm going to explain a couple of pieces and parts to this. There's a few components. A couple of things to consider, to know, to do this. It's not just grab a file and start filing on it and remove a little material and do it again, and remove a little material and do it again. There's a couple of finer points to note. The first one I want to note is, and it's no different with this liner lock, but if you look here, look at the tiniest little amount of contact on that steel insert. There's this idea that on a blade, on a knife like this, it's got a liner lock or a frame lock, that whole thing is contacting the back of the blade. Ooh, that thing's sharp. I can feel it just touching it. So there's the ground contact patch on the back of the blade. That's where the lock is going to contact. And there's this idea that the lock is completely contacting the back of that. Yeah, that's all one big contact patch. And it's not. In fact, it's the tiniest little amount of contact. Come on, man, focus. There's another reason why I don't do these kinds of videos, because I'm just not proficient like that. But look at just the front leading edge is contacting the blade and the back of the blade. And you'll find this on literally almost every knife. Like, it's not this whole metal insert is contacting the back of the blade. It's this tiny little front leading edge. That's all that's contacting it. Just the smallest little area. So that's another reason why I don't think it's talked a lot about, because boy, it doesn't take much to see something like that and then criticize the whole lock in itself. It's like just that tiny little bit is what's making contact. Yeah, just that tiny little hairline, that hairline on the edge of that leading edge is what's contacting. Well, let's talk about a couple other things. So you can remove that material from two places. You can take it from the back of the blade, right here. You can file that down, or you can take it from this metal insert on this one, but it would be from the metal liner on this one. If you notice, look at that leading edge. Just the very front edge of that is being contacted. Yep. So you can take it from both. I don't like working off the back of the blade. I'm not interested really in working off of this. When in fact I've got a piece of metal here, especially on a metal insert like that, I'm going to pop that out of there and work on it. And we're going to do it to this knife. And so what's my goal? My goal is to, where we were at 20% lockup, my goal is to get this over closer to, man, the focus issues. I can't stand watching video and it's just all blurry. But the goal is to get us to about 50%, 40 to 50% lockup on that. These angles are important. So the angle of the blade is falling away at this angle, falling away from the lock. And you may not see it, but the angle of the lock, the liner lock or this metal insert, is opposite. And so hence that leading edge making contact with that blade. And it's important to maintain those angles, because if that angle's reversed, when there's tension put on the blade this way to fail that lock, if the angles aren't correct, it'll push that lock open. Versus when the angles are correct like this, the idea is that it should make the knife tighter. Like as you apply this pressure, this lock should get tighter and hold more firmly. If you reverse those angles, when you put pressure on this, it can push it away. So it's important to maintain those angles. Now, you can do it a couple of ways. You got a file, you got small files. The first thing on a metal insert like this is to get it out of the knife. I don't want to do anything inside that knife. So once it's out of the knife, I have to really kind of get my bearings, because this thing is going to have an angle like this. The angle of the front of this is like this. Is it 1 degree or a half a degree? It's pretty slight, but there's an angle on this. Actually, it's this way. Yeah, the blade's this way and the lock is this way. So I want to maintain that, where that front leading edge is the first thing to contact the back of the blade. And so there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can hand file it right here to take that material off. And then obviously as you're filing it, you want to monitor, well, where am I taking material? And it looks like those few passes that I made, I'm taking it off the back edge, which that's okay, because that's the angle I want. I'm definitely looking for that angle. I want it to come off that back edge first. Well, there now I took a material off the whole face of that, right? See it? So that's one way. Another smaller file, I can get it in, try to get it flat on the piece, like so, try to maintain that angle, and then I can slowly try to take some material off this way, trying to maintain that front edge. I can tell you that I'm not a fan of either of these ways, and the main reason is because no matter how hard I try to do that and keep this flat and the correct angle, using hand files like that, I've seen the tendency is that this becomes rounded, because it's almost impossible to just maintain that flat angle. Now, another way to do it is to get the file flat and then run the piece. That seems to work a little better, to get the file flat and then run this piece and remove material that way. What I end up doing is I use this X45 belt on my machine. On the back side of the machine, I've got a flat platform where the belt runs through, so I can come in at my correct angle and just touch it to that belt and monitor it, and gives it a really nice flat finish, and I can maintain that angle properly. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fire up my grinder right over here, and I'm going to remove a little bit of material. I'm going to pause and try to point the camera over here. I think I can do it, and then you'll be able to hopefully watch what I'm doing. So let's get that done. Okay, I killed the camera, but let's try again. Okay, so there's that flat platform on the back of the sharpener right there. And so when I run the belt through and put tension on it, it gives me a flat platform back here. And so I'm just going to work right here. The key to this process is minimal material removal. A little bit, reassemble, see where you're at. A little bit, reassemble, see where you're at. If I was going to take off a certain amount of material, I would not want to take it off in one pass, 2 passes. I'd rather take it off in 10 passes. Take the tiniest little bit, put it back together, and do that 10 times versus 2 or 3. Because, man, that third time, I could just take the smallest amount too much and then the lock not work anymore. So I'm going to run this film. I'm going to see if I can't take a little off, and hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I don't know if you can or not. It's just going to be what it is. So again, I got to verify my angle, what I'm trying to do. So I need to be this way. So it's going to be like this. Okay. So if you'll notice, let's see if I can show it, but I just took a little bit off the very back like that. So I'm having to get my bearings and get it lined up properly, and it'll take me a second, but once I get there, I'll be able to see it. Yeah, that was pretty much across the gambit right there. Yeah, there we go. Smallest amount of material. I'm not looking for major material removal. All right, I'm going to check it. And so, you know, the way that process works is now I got to reassemble. Okay, let's put it back together and we'll test it. And man, honestly, that's it. A little bit, reassemble, check it. A little bit, reassemble, check it. The detent pressure is where I want it to be on this knife. I've adjusted that lock bar on this frame lock, and the tension opening and closing is where I want it to be. You know, I would consider that tuned correctly. I was going to say perfect or whatever, because I don't know, it could always maybe be better or whatever. But I would say that to me, it's tuned correctly, has a correct tension on it. And so I'm not looking to change the tension on the detent anymore. What I'm wanting to do is remove material until that lock is able to go 35, 40, 45% across that blade. Now, I can't tell if it added more or not, but I'm going to put one of these back screws in because it's important to get some balance from the front to back alignment of the scales versus just having the pivot in there. See if I can get correct tension. Yeah, so the blade's centered. The action's what I would consider to be appropriate. And then I'm going to say that the lockup on this now looks the same to me, like 35 to 40%. So let's see if we fail. Yeah, it still failed, but not as easily. So, as I said, here's the process. A little more. We'll take another run at it. And I may have to do this 10 times, so I'm not going to film it all because, man, this would be an hour-long video. The process is no different, but I'll film this next one and then we'll see. So you can see, it's not a major construction project to get it back out, get my angles correct, and I'm gonna go back over here and take a little bit more off of that. Okay, let's put it back together. So again, I mean, I kept it rolling. Now, if I do it another time, I won't keep the camera rolling. I'll shut the camera off and we'll reassemble and then we'll check it again. I don't need to keep, like just filling content. You know what I'm saying? All right. But keep in mind, I'm taking the slightest amount of material. I am not in any way trying to be in a hurry. And I am fully prepared to do it 10 or 20 times, however many times is necessary. Because eventually, here's what I do know. That lock's going to start moving deeper into the blade. And at some point, that lock failure will go away. Not maybe. Not like, well, I hope this works. No, it will work. Let me check blade tension. Yeah, so I'm locked up really tight. So let's look at that lockup. It doesn't look like it changed at all, does it? That's okay though. Remember what I said? I actually, maybe I thought it and I didn't say it. But I may do this 5 times and it doesn't look like it's moved at all. What you don't want to do in this is then get aggressive. Like, man, this is so much be patient. Just baby step, baby step, baby step. Oh, so it took a lot more to fail at that time, but it did fail. And so, yeah, I'm going to do it again. All right, I'll be right back. And again. And again. Okay, is this 4 or 5? I don't know. Let's look at lockup here. So I think we're at 50% now. I do believe that we've gained. Yeah, so still wonderful action. Like the detent's still humming the way it should. The blade's centered. We've definitely gained. And so, I don't know if you can tell, but I kind of have an expectation now. Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, so a little bit. I don't, like, listen, I could say that a million times and it wouldn't be enough, man. Baby steps. Take a little bit, take a little bit, take a little bit. And when it seems like you're not making any progress, just take a little bit more, just the tiniest little bit. And can you do the same thing with a file? You can. 100%. Oh, that action on this knife. I mean, it's just so wonderful. When this thing's tuned up, man, it's legit. I mean, just the acoustics of it, the stiffness, the tension. I mean, it feels like a piece that should be graded way above its pay grade. Because I think it's like a $50, $60 knife in D2. I mean, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so, all right. So, man, there's my video on how to deal with lock failure and adjusting the steel insert or a liner lock. Let me re-emphasize that point, and we'll get out of this video. But y'all asked for it. So, I mean, no apologies for me for being fumbly hand and not perfect and having the production 100%. Because I'm really kind of doing it on the fly. I didn't prepare for it. I literally just said, there's another video where I'm fixing something, but I'm not saying how. And so now I've illustrated it. Can you do the same thing with this file? Yeah, with this file, you can. I'm going to say 100% it's more difficult because you're having to maintain that angle in both hands. Could you put it in a vise, the little lock? Yeah. Is this going to be more difficult to do this? Um, Probably, because you here a couple of things that you have to do. Like you're going to have to get something under this liner like so and hold it away from the knife. You might want to tape this surface. But of course, if you tape it, then you have to take the tape off and put it back on every time you reassemble the knife to check this. You know what I'm saying? Because the process is the same. Like you have to file a little bit, and you would file not up and down, you would put a slight angle on it. Yep, because remember, this angle is this way, the blade angle is this way. Makes sense? So the blade's angle is this way, the liner angle is this way, so that leading edge is poking out first. It's going to make first contact. And again, I know that's not a great testament to the rigidity and sturdiness of this kind of lock, but whenever these locks have been tested, they're only making contact in those small patches, and they do pretty good, man, with their ability to not fail, even with that small amount. So anyways, the video really wasn't about that. It's just what you can do to adjust it. But this ain't no different. Just a little bit of hand file, and then refit it, hand file, refit it. Yeah. So anyways, there's my video. Don't do this. Or do what you want to do. All right. Appreciate y'all watching.